I want to talk about wilderness school models and nature education models for a minute. And the reason I want to share this is because I believe that we're heavily influenced by how we were taught. So in other words, so I'll give you my story for a second and just see what you think. So for example, I was taught through Tom Brown. That was the initial lineage of wilderness skills for me in a formal way. And so when I read Tom Brown's books, I signed up for his class, like many people did. And I went to his school. I flew from California out to New Jersey, flew into Newark, went to the Pine Barrens. And at that time, Tom's school really was a week long. It was 7 days or 6 days. That was the way he taught. He didn't do weekend workshops. He didn't do day workshops. He didn't do 3-week-long intensives. He didn't do 6 months. He just did 1 week classes. And you paid your money. You came, and basically, if anybody's gone to Tom Brown classes, usually it's like a fire hose of information, and then you got your spat out on the other side, wondering what the heck just happened. And it's really up to you to integrate those skills. And so that was what the model was for me for years. I would go to his classes, get shot out the other side with that knowledge, go back and try and integrate those skills and that awareness and that knowledge, and make money, and then go to the next one because I wanted to learn. It created a tremendous thirst for learning for me. And so I'm not knocking that, but that's a very particular model of teaching and a particular experience. You can also contrast that with people who teach in different ways. So for example, I'll just say that when I was working in a summer camp, a few years later, what I noticed was that I was trying to, in a way, to teach my summer camp, and I'd have kids for like a month. And honestly, you can't teach summer camp kids for a month the same way you teach Tom Brown style, because I tried it and it doesn't work very well, because kids get burnt. They get like maxed out on information, and even though they love you, they just can't absorb any more information. And so I started to realize that, in a way, teaching them more was actually teaching them less, because they were actually shutting down from the amount of the sheer volume of information that they were learning. And so I had to really change and see. I had to really observe what kids could handle and then adapt my program to that. And I had to really get more downtime. I had to do a lot more play, a lot more games, a lot more practicing, which you don't get time to do in a tracker school class. So that model had to really shift for me. And at the same time, so let's just say this. I'll just write this down here. So there's the Tom Brown model, which I would call the workshop model. And the workshop model is, a week long. And it's got, it's very intensive in nature. And it's what I call the instructor style. So the instructor style, or the expert style. So there's kind of an expert element to it, which is the person that's going to come in and they're going to just give you the information, and then you're going to learn a bunch of stuff, and then you shoot out the other side. There's really not a lot of mentoring going on. Like, I wouldn't say that Tom Brown was my mentor. He was my teacher, but he wasn't my mentor, because I think of mentoring as someone who you can actually call, and you can actually ask questions, and you have a relationship. So a mentor is really someone you have a relationship with. It's not someone that's going to be the expert and just tell you stuff, and then you kind of go on your way. So then there's this the other style that I've seen, and then we've done a little bit here, which is like I call the long terms, the long program. So this oftentimes can be a homeschooling program, or it could be like we're going to meet once a month, throughout the year, and do workshops, but we're going to build a relationship and we're going to develop that. And so this one is like ongoing. Or it could be, 9 months, something like that. It's not necessarily intensive, because you might focus on, this is more selective. So instead of like blasting you with every possible skill, you're going to maybe pick 3 skills and then practice them over a year, or you're going to slowly integrate that. So this is more of an integrative program. The person that's going to lead it is an expert, hopefully, in some of these things. And I say expert, I don't mean like they're the know-it-all that everyone now is going to flip out on because they're afraid of the word expert. But somebody that's had experience, that's where it comes from, experience. So hopefully you want an experienced person who's a mentor, has a mentor-like approach. So there's that model, and that model is a pretty awesome model. You also have the gathering model. So the gathering model is, I kind of look at the gathering model as really just like this incredible taste of everything. You know, you're going to get a really deep taste, depending on what kind of gathering you go to. So usually the gathering model, the gatherings are kind of shorter. So they're going to be a weekend or a week maybe, or 5 days or 4 days. So they're short. There's like a palette. There's a palette of skills. You get a taste of everything. And you get to try out different things, and you get to experience different mentors. So there's lots of teachers. And so there's lots of teachers. And it's also very social. So this is set up as a social experience too, because there's campfires and people running around, there's music and all that sort of stuff, which oftentimes in a long-term program or a short program, they've kind of traded the social thing for information, for content. For this one here, oftentimes you can't afford to bring in a band and also have 17 instructors and all this kind of stuff happening. So there's a magic around each one of these approaches, and each of these has a very clear, advantages, disadvantages, and so forth. And one of the things that I want to say is that, and I want to just mention about loyalty. What I found over 25 years of doing this is that generally when somebody is attracted to, like, say, Tom Brown School, and they go to Tom, and I'm just pointing to him because he's like one of the key people that really has shared this method. If you go to Tom and you learn through Tom, you usually develop, I think, you develop a powerful connection with and a bond with that teacher or with that school. So if the school you want to learn from really idolizes and loves tracking, chances are you're going to love tracking. You're going to really be bonded with that. Even if you're not even that into tracking, there's oftentimes a reluctance to go to another school because you have this bond, this loyalty that you have. And so what happens is that you stick with that school. And you go, that's the school I'm going to go to. I love these guys. They blew my mind, or these women, or whatever. They blew my mind with this incredible experience. And so therefore, I'm just waiting to go back to that and come back and get more information and more skills studying the way they did it. So you get bonded, and then you get this expectation of that, if you follow me. So likewise, if you're having a program that's ongoing, you get bonded with that experience. Well, and honestly, this isn't just wilderness skills. It could be tracking, could be herbal studies, it could be permaculture, it could be anything. We tend to bond with people who open our hearts. So when we go someplace and you really have an open heart experience, you connect with them, and at that point you really kind of like accept whatever that thing that they're doing, and you accept it as, oh my God, that must be the best way because they're the best, because they totally changed my life and gave my life meaning, and not they did, but they helped me to discover my own passion and meaning. And so you have this incredible bond. So here's the thing, the reason why I'm talking about this, and this is like nature connection models. That's the the problem with this, as I see it today, is that, there's actually another model called the dojo model, which is like kind of similar to a long-term process that Joe Lau and I used to talk about. And then there's the after-school model, like a really, really short-term programs and so forth. But here's the thing that I would say that's really difficult for us. And I believe this is our blind spot. Our blind spot is, and you probably can't see this because of my head's in the way. Tom Brown used to talk about how the Apaches would always, the scouts would always take advantage of the blind spots that sentries would have, that guards would have when they'd be guarding the fort. They'd come out and they'd look on the landscape and they'd say, oh, there's a cactus. Is there anybody there? No. And so they said the Apaches would actually stand next to a rock. They'd stand next to a tree just out of rifle range. And they'd stand somewhere. And they do that like enough times for 3 or 4 days to the point where all the guards knew where the Apaches would show up. And so the Apaches would then come in, and when they wanted to get close to the fort and come in, all they had to do was not stand in those spots. They had to get camouflage, and they could actually creep up because there was a blind spot between these two points. And so they could actually kind of come into the middle because no one's looking for them there because they're looking and saying, by the cactus, no, by the rock, no, or whatever. Meanwhile, there are people sneaking up in the blind spot because they weren't looking for them there, because their eye was trained repeatedly to go to those spots. And I know that's true for myself. I know that I've driven on the road, and I remember one time driving by this really nice little field that I could just see when I drove through. I would look down that field, and one time I saw a big buck standing there, huge rack, and I was just like, oh my God, there's a deer there. Every time I go driving, when I'm driving down that road, even though it's been 20 years, every time I go by that little valley and look, my eye always goes to where the deer was, because I'm like hoping I'll see that deer again. Of course, that deer's probably long gone, but you can get my meaning is that my mind is going even 20 years. It's programmed in there. So my question is, and I'm going to move over here now. As my question is how do we as wilderness instructors, how do we look at and remember and realize that there's like a ton of models that are out here that could teach people and give them a powerful experience, but we're missing them because, number one, our teachers didn't give them to us or teach them this way. Number two, we just didn't think of it yet. And number three, we're so busy trying to work these older models that they literally don't even exist for us. And so I believe that in a way, if we're going to really, the reason I'm mentioning this is I'm not trying to pick on any of these other models. So I want to be really clear about that. I'm really not trying to pick on any of these models. Like, honestly, Tom Brown could teach, he's a grown man. He can teach any way he wants. Gatherings, I'm not criticizing the Firefly gathering or the Falling Leaf or whatever the gatherings are. I think they're awesome. So I'm just saying, I'm not asking anybody to change. What I am trying to do is to say, what other models can we create? What other models can we emulate? And how can we build, in a way, models that will work that also are ways that can actually make money for us? Because in order for us to continue to be connecting people to nature, we need to be working full-time teaching them. And in order to work full-time, we need to get paid so we can feed our families, pay our bills, get more training, get days off so we don't burn out, and so forth. So this is really important for us to say, what can we do? And maybe there's a model where we go, you know what, I'm going to use this model right here, but I'm going to add this component, this revenue stream, and I'm going to add this revenue stream because this is a different kind of model that's going to be really awesome. What is this? I don't know yet. I don't want to share a lot of things yet right now because I don't know exactly what these models are going to look like, but I know we're going to come up with these because once we realize we have these blind spots, we can actually work to eliminate those. We can actually work to it's kind of like having a search image. When we know what we're looking for, if we're looking for a forked stick this big with a Y this big, we can find it. So right now, I'm looking at this and saying, okay, how could we be able to do this to support the work we're doing? Are there other models that we could bring in? And we're not necessarily breaking loyalty to our teachers because our teacher, maybe you grew up on the gathering model and you went to Winter Count or Rabbit Stick and then you've just been like, man, that's it. That's the thing. That's the way I love to go. That's awesome. But you might also then want to incorporate some of these other types of models. So I believe that if we're going to reach 30 million new people in the next, say, 5 to 10 years, I believe we're going to need probably at least 10 more models for reaching people that are all, I think anyone could look at this and say, is this valuable? Hell yeah, it's valuable. Is this a valuable approach? Hell yeah, these are fantastic. Is this a valuable model? Absolutely. Okay, like I'm not disputing that. Is, you know, if you run programs in this, are these difficult to run? You know, absolutely. Is anybody here getting rich on any of these? I don't know of anybody that's making a ton of money. I would say, you know, probably there's like a handful, probably like 4 schools in the country that are actually probably really financially solvent and really doing well. And many of those schools that are doing well only are doing so because their founders have books out, you know, multiple books and other media that actually helps them to get, you know, students on a consistent basis. Almost all of these are really difficult. This is a tremendous amount of work for these. And most people that are doing these out of their vision and out of their love of the earth, their love of nature, and their love of people and kids, and they know how important it is. So my goal for sharing this is to say there are ways for us to add revenue streams to whatever it is you want to do to be able to make it easier to support what you're doing. And I believe that that's the key if we're going to really reach more people and grow and actually do what we love. Because I know I love carving bows and arrows, or doing flint knapping, or, you know, getting a bunch of people around a fire and having us telling stories. I love doing that. It's hard to do that if you aren't making enough money, and because you'll burn out when you combine hard work and financial stress. That's like a perfect recipe. You know what's on the other side of that: burnout, divorce. You know, next thing you know, you're living in a little fishing town in Oregon and you never want to hear about skills again, or something like that, right? So, you know, really, you're really looking at this and saying, how do we eliminate burnout, and how do we create, you know, if we talk about wanting to build our culture sustainably, and we want our culture to live sustainably, then all of these have to be sustainable. And honestly, you can't create a sustainable program without income, without reliable income, and without reaching a lot of students, and without creating really powerful impact and helping your school to survive. Now, I know that there are people that are like, you know, skills should all be free, and, you know, they're for everyone. And that's fine. That's what's called YouTube. Anybody who wants to learn for free can go on YouTube for free. Well, you have to pay for your internet connection unless you're at the library. But you can watch all your videos and do whatever you want to do at the library and then watch it for free. So there's free there. There's also Craigslist or meetups and stuff. There's people that are practicing skills where you can go and learn for free. If that's your thing, you can do that. That's awesome. But for people that are going to make a living selling stuff and working with their school or their instructor programs that they're doing, you know, programs that they're offering as a freelance instructor, as a freelance professional, you have to be able to find a way to do this. Otherwise, you're going to be working all the time at, you know, doing a job that isn't this, and just to pay the bills. And when you live that split personality, that's rough. I've lived that before. I know a lot of people that do, and we all can agree that that's rough. It's rough to kind of like come in and do a week-long workshop after you have to race for 3 weeks to get that 1 week off, and then you have to prep everything like for 3 nights till midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, and then you have to, you know, teach, and then as soon as this program's over, you're back on the front line again working on Monday morning, and you know your family suffers and your health will suffer, and yes, it might be really awesome, but it's like it's at a cost. There's a deficit. You're running a deficit, and that deficit is not sustainable. So that's why we need more models, and I'm in the process of developing those models. I'm really interested in talking. If you're someone that you feel these models, you're working in one of these models or anything else, but you'd like to connect more about that, please feel free to email me, give me a call, contact me on Facebook. I'd be happy to sit with you and kind of brainstorm with you about what might work best for you. So check it out. Please comment. Let me know what you think of this. Let me know if you think I'm crazy. Let me know if you think you like it. Let me know if you have any ideas. We need ideas. We need ways to share. We're really in this together. And so that's why I'm sharing this. I'm wanting to connect people out there and say, I believe there's answers that are right around us. Just like in nature. When you're in nature in the wilderness, Tom always used to say to me, not me individually, but as part of the class. But he would say, Ricardo, there's always something around you that you can use. So if you cut your finger, there's always a plant nearby that can help you heal. If you need a piece of wood for something, like a bow and arrow, there's a bow wood around. There's always something around you that can help you to survive and to live and to thrive. And I believe that's the same is true for us. If we're struggling in these models, if you're running any of these models and you're kind of struggling, or you're kind of, trying to figure it out or whatever, number one, if you're really struggling, number one, you got to check and make sure you have your skills are in good shape. But the other thing I would say is sometimes it's the model you're using. Sometimes it's not actually just that you're just not good enough, or that no one cares, or that no one will come. It's that you just don't have, it's like when I would put a trap out in the woods and I didn't get anything, and I go back every day, day after day after day after day. It's not that nature wouldn't, gift me with a animal for food. That isn't it. It was just that I didn't have good enough skills. Maybe it wasn't the right trap. Maybe it wasn't the right trap or the right model for that animal. Maybe it wasn't in the right location. Maybe it wasn't the right bait. Maybe it wasn't, it all deals with skills, and it deals with like mindset, and it deals with figuring it out. So if you're running any of these programs and you're struggling, it could be any of a number of things. And I'm totally all about solving these problems so that we can really reach more people, and to do it in a way that is, you guessed it, sustainable. And sustainable means getting time off. It means that when your truck needs new tires, you can just pay for them, and you don't have to freak out and wonder how you're going to pay for them because your school didn't make enough money, or, whatever. So there's a lot of good, cool solutions out there. Let me know what you think. Thanks.